It's been a Gary Gulman. He is a Gary Gulman. It is Gary Gulman. It's Gary Gulman. You look way better than I do. You must not have taken your dog to the vet and spent over 1,300 fucking dollars. That's what I just did.
Oh, that's they can tell me it's 13 million and I'd spend it.
Yeah, no, I did. I got insurance. I have insurance. It's why, but it's still like you still have to put the money up and then you get it back. And the only thing about my dog is because I have a big Doberman. The one thing that I brought her in there for today, I think is not covered because it's a pre-existing condition like dermatitis. Yeah,
we need an affordable act for.
Yeah, it's like Biden's trying to get the people healthcare. We need to worry about the real like backbone of America, the dogs, the ferrets, the cats, man.
Yeah, totally. It's pre-existing condition. I mean, but that was the case for humans for so long. If you had a pre-existing condition, you couldn't get covered. It's like, who didn't have a pre-existing condition?
That's the whole thing. Once you're born, the condition's there.
Yeah.
All right, you ready to jump into this? We'll get you out of here in about an hour.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, so Peter, just pick it up from here. Keep the dog shit because that ruled. That's to my editor. Up top, that's Adam. Adam's can look up everything in real time, and
cool.
So if there's any like facts or anything we miss, I have a script in front of me, so I have like all the breakdown. If there's any questions though that I don't know or he doesn't know, like or you don't know, Adam will know it.
Okay, awesome.
So before we go any further, like one, I got to say, I love the Great Depression.
Thanks for watching, man. I really appreciate that.
I love any comic, being one myself that is able to bare their soul, be honest, and especially, someone looks at you and it's like you're a good looking dude, you're tall, so you have the two things going for you in this world, to get pussy. And you're funny. So to find out that you have depression and you suffer from anything, it warms us 5'9" dudes up to make us realize it's like, yeah, dude, the world is perfect.
Yeah, things are tough all over, man. But I used to need people who had, like, I remember when I first found out Terry Bradshaw from the Steelers had depression. I thought, I really believed that if I had won 4 Super Bowls and was an NFL broadcaster, I'd feel good about myself. And it wasn't the case. And then I read in the midst of my depression, I read Springsteen's Born to Run, his autobiography, which I recommend to anybody, even if you're not a Springsteen fan. It's just so beautifully written. And he talked about having depression so severe at like 58 that he couldn't get out of bed. And if I remember correctly, at the time, he was Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah. It's like, how are you depressed when you can literally sell out a stadium in your home state and be worshipped by just so many?
I know. And so it reinforced the idea to me that it's biology and not any kind of accomplishment or talent or being really cute.
Completely. And this is what I think is, and this is where I want to start with this, because we're talking about a band that in my lifetime, I mean, since I became a diehard Beatles fan at the age of about 16, like when the Beatles anthology came out on ABC, it's like I'd known all the hits, but that was when I was like, I'm digging into the records. And throughout my life, that I'm 42, it's true. When I am in a bad mood, music helps. It always does. It's either going to make me sadder, which is what I want, because I want to get the cry out, or I want to feel better. And the Beatles are kind of like that Prozac for me, where I can put it on. And it does it's like a palate cleanser. So do you use this band kind of for that as well? Or
I mean, it's really interesting because you're absolutely right. I've used it for both. I've used it to feel better. And then I remember I was in this really, I hate to use the word competitive for an acting class, but the people were really serious in the acting class and I needed to cry in a scene. And so I put on before I went in there just the first sentence. There are places I remember. Boom. And that's all I needed. By the time it got to in my life, oh, forget it. I was primed. So yeah, it's incredible. And the thing that always blows my mind is that they did everything they were going to do together in 6 or 7 years.
7 years. 7 years. You know, it's well, I guess let's really start with this question, because you brought that up. Are the Beatles the most important band to ever do it?
I mean, I don't feel qualified to answer that question. So but I've consulted with a lot of musicians.
Okay. Listen, by the way, hold on. Just Gary, just fuck the society, fuck all the fans. They're gonna get mad at us regardless of what we say. That music fans are the worst. I know all my listeners are probably screaming at me right now, but fuck all of you for critiquing. We're two comics talking about a band. If you want the real shit, go to Malcolm Gladwell or go to fucking or Matt Pinfield. We are just two comics chewing the fat. Okay, everybody? Now, knowing that, re-answer that question. In your opinion, do you think the Beatles are one of the most important bands to ever do it?
I mean, absolutely one of, but yeah. I think it's probable they are the most influential and important. And I'm not aware enough of some of the blues stuff, because I know that the Beatles built on a lot of blues things, but also I don't know that much about jazz. And I know McCartney built on a lot of jazz principles.
Well, we're losing you.
Ideas and forms. So sorry about that.
No, you're good. Don't worry. You're back.
It's hard to, yeah. It's hard to say whether they're the most, but to me they would have to be on the Mount Rushmore. Why do people call when I have the do not disturb thing? I'm just gonna turn it off. I'm sorry.
Turn it off for a moment. I need you for 45 minutes. Fuck, Judd Apatow can wait. He can wait. Okay.
Nobody calls me all week, and right now they call me.
It's probably SD. Like, what are you? Are you coming by the club later? We haven't seen you in weeks.
Oh no, it's not.
I can't, look, I'm 42. How old are you?
I'll be 52 in a week.
Okay, so we're 10 years off. Now, did you catch the tail end of? You didn't catch the tail end of Beatles Mania.
No, by the time I was aware, I feel like the first time I heard a Beatles song was probably 1973. And it was, I just saw the actual album the other day. It was I think it's 62 to 66, that compilation album.
Is that the blue one? Yeah, I think that's blue, right? And then the other one's red.
Yeah, the newer one is red. And that thing was just stacked. And it opened with Love Me Do, which to me, that's sort of the key song, because from first moment I heard it, I was entranced by that song at 3 years old. That is incredible when you're being stuffed with such corny crap as a kid and pop music mostly, and I had access to that because my brother was semi cool. It's so, I don't know what the word is. It transports me back to that. I can feel, see, smell. I'm picturing a long shag rug in a so thick, and it was like Beatles hair length. This shag rug in my brother's room, and the blue wallpaper and the navy blue curtains and everything. It's incredible how that just the harmonica opened to that song, and I am in that room. That's why music has it all over just about every other every other art form in that it evokes so much. It's miraculous. I mean, it's I think Kurt Vonnegut said that music, or maybe it was jazz, is evidence that there's a God.
Wow, I've never heard that, and I actually couldn't agree more. Because regardless of how like I could watch, a heart-wrenching movie, and I could go see a brilliant comic or see an incredible theater or whatever, and nothing emotionally touches me the way that music does. One of my favorite things, because I want to get back to that with your brother thing, but I love this because during the pandemic, I think the thing that kept me sane were two things: was music and mushrooms. And there was a couple nights where I would just take a grip of mushrooms, and we were getting ready to record a Beatles. No, it was one of the solos. It was Paul McCartney, Wings, Band on the Run. We were getting to record that with Reggie Watts. And the night before, I was bored and I was like, I'll take some mushrooms. And I started right as they were starting to get squiggly, and I was starting to feel like the movement of the psychedelic in my body. I was like, I want to remember why I love the Beatles, but let's be specific and only focus on the Paul McCartney tracks. And so what I did was I started with Please Please Me, and I would just look at Wikipedia and go, all right, Paul wrote this one, or this is like a Paul song, or Paul like sang this. And I just only listened to the Paul McCartney tracks from the first record all the way to Let It Be. And I mean, crying, dancing, the range of emotion. Now, yes, I'm high on mushrooms, but it healed me. So when I sat down to record the episode the next day, like I was genuine in being like, no, this is why Paul is so important to the band. These are the songs. And then it's like, and it all makes sense of how you got from what he started with to Wings. So I couldn't agree with you more that music is that powerful, especially if you're remembering it when you're 3. I mean, yes. Did it become an obsession after that, or what was it? How did your history with the Beatles grow from that?
I mean, I wouldn't say it was an obsession. I think I understood early on that the Beatles had broken up, and that they were really, really special. And the whole thing was that I didn't really have access to my brother's equipment, so I couldn't put it on when I wanted to. So I sort of, the good and the bad was that I had to listen to him when he was playing it. So it was like this bonding experience, and this thing that will always, I mean, the interesting thing is it coincided with 2 other really impressive albums, which were Frampton Comes Alive and the Boston debut album. So those 3 albums to this day, and I guess those probably came out when I was 4 or 5. Those 3 albums, that compilation, and then there was a compilation of the Beach Boys. Really, I guess I imagine there's probably some research into when your musical tastes are fused, or what contributes to them. And I bet you being exposed at that age made me interested in a great variety of music, because those 3 bands and the Beach Boys also were eclectic in their influence and their output, and also virtuosos as musicians.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, the Beatles, Frampton, and the Beach Boys. I mean, I'm talking in at least those 3 artists are in the top 20 most influential, maybe not artists, but just each have an album that changed music. I mean, Frampton, it's so funny because Peter Frampton, it's like, I'm not going to call him a joke at all, because Frampton Comes Alive, the whole joke about it is that everybody had it. and yet he could go to the Duane Reade right now in downtown Manhattan, and people were like, who are you, some old dude? And same with even most of the Beach Boys. The Beatles, on the other hand, transcended that. Like I still think the majority of the younger generation, if you just showed a picture of the four Beatles and you didn't say no context, you were just like, who are these four people? They'd be like, I think those are the Beatles. And I've
Yeah.
never really listened to them, but because I don't know how popular it is, but they feel like out of those three artists, the one group that like if you put the Rolling Stones up, people would be like, I don't know, maybe like are they like related to Johnny Depp, you know? But the Beatles are the Beatles. Like there's this thing. It's like I always like to say, Gary, it's like when I'm talking to somebody in that argument of how important the Beatles were to music, and they're just like, man, they're just like, some old motherfuckers. And I'm like, yeah, but we don't get it because we weren't alive during their height.
Right.
Like during their height, it changed everything. Like Elvis Presley, the Beatles, and like Michael Jackson are the three that in a sense were global. Nobody's global anymore the way that the Beatles, maybe Drake, maybe Kanye.
Yeah.
But I doubt it. Do you even listen to any new music at all? Or are you just stuck in like classic shit?
I mean, it's minimal, the amount of new stuff. I listen to a lot of new hip hop and
really
yeah,
hip hop.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of new stuff. My wife listens to a lot of hip hop, and I do listen to some new pop music. So we listen to I guess Doja Cat from time to time, and Bo Millie and Meg The Stallion. So I do run into a lot of new hip hop, but I do not. I mean, the last sort of rock band that was new to me was probably Greta Van Fleet.
Yeah, okay, but that's Led Zeppelin. That's fucking Led Zeppelin, dude. Yeah, right. That's like you're not getting anything new from them.
It's like I got into the Black Keys, and I'm like, no, I'm just getting into old music again.
All right, here's my question. What's a more important song? Okay, A Hard Day's Night or Wet Ass Pussy? This is true. I want a real answer on that.
I mean, I'll bet you I mean, there are Beatles songs that are bigger than Wet Ass Pussy, but I think that Wet Ass Pussy is probably more important than A Hard Day's Night.
I mean, it's a woman empowering, there's they always like to say the question.
It's got that controversial portion to it. And it's I mean, I remember we went bananas over I Touch Myself by Divinals.
I remember that,
like, holy man, this is scandalous. and if you had told me that someday I would be not even really moved by the idea of Wet Ass Pussy, I shrugged my shoulders. I was like, all right, that's how far. It just reminds me of comedy where I remember early on I wanted to fit in sort of in the New York scene, and so I'd try to be edgy, and then you realize how edgy you really have to be considered edgy within this group, and it's like I don't have the stomach for it to go that far. So yeah,
I can imagine you do it. You having to follow like Rick Shapiro at the Cellar, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to stay in my lane.
Like the things that are shocking to me are just a day in the life for those guys. Yeah.
All right. Well, here, let's before we get into any more questions, I'm not going to do the full background of the Beatles because everybody, if you don't know who the Beatles are, just listen to any of the past episodes we've done where we've gone into deep of how they got together. But we're going to focus this solely on the album that we're talking about, which is A Hard Day's Night that came out in July of 1964. Here we go. Adam, hold on. Where's the little breakdown on it, bud? Is it under? It's under background.
It's under background. Yeah, that's
okay. Cool.
Your album background.
That's I'm pretty stupid. I should have known that. It says background Hard Day's Night. Well, holy shit! This album. This album's so good it flies by. It's only 29 minutes and 47 seconds. Very easy listen. And this is also, keep this in mind. This is their third record. So the first one is Please Please Me, which is, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's it wasn't like really so much that it was groundbreaking in the sound. This is what's coming out of London. This is what's coming out in America. They just happen to be British and very cute, and that's kind of what took their popularity off. Now, the album before this one with the Beatles, Adam, and I want you to double check this math. That has does that have Yesterday on it? With the Beatles, what's like? I know it doesn't.
So I'll run the tracks down. It won't be long. All I've got to do, all my loving, don't bother me, little child, till there was you, please, Mr. Postman, roll over Beethoven, hold me tight, you really got a hold on me, I want to be your man, devil in her heart, not a second time, and then money.
Okay, so most of those were covers. Yeah. Most of those are covers. So this is the first Beatles record that is all written by Paul McCartney and John Lennon. So here's a little background. After playing their first live performance in the United States on the Ed Sullivan Show in February of '64 and playing a few other stateside performances, the group went back to England to prepare for making their first major feature film in March, as well as an accompanying album. Everything for the album was laid down in early June. This is their third record, released, like I said, July '64 in the UK, with different version 2 weeks prior in the United States with a different track listing that had some of the score of the movie. This is the only album where every song was McCartney and Lennon as writers, with Lennon being the primary on 9 tracks. It peaked at #1 on both sides of the pond and has gone 4 times platinum in the United States and platinum in the UK. As with Help, the first side of the record was a soundtrack of the film of the same name. The second side consists of other songs written for the album. This is also the tour that supports this album that the Beatles met Bob Dylan and subsequently introduced to marijuana. What's cool about this record, Gary, and I mean, I look, I am a diehard Beatles fan. I know there are those dudes that fucking obsess, like Ned Flanders, that have all the fucking doodads and all this shit. I have the Beatles apple tattooed on my arm.
Oh, like, wow.
I've always been that. I mean, originally I got it in Baltimore by I'd call this guy a meth addict. I would say he was high on meth when he did it. And originally it was just a green blob, a circle above the Ganesha. It was just a green circle with like kind of a stem. And it looked horrible. And he had these weird colors around it. And then when I got into stand-up, there was a comedian named John Tomaszewski, who was also a tattoo artist. And he was in our circle with like me, Gerard Carmichael, Byron Bowers, Angelo Bowers, and Rel, a lot of the guys that I'm still friends with now. Yeah. And I remember I was like a broke comic and I was like, God, it's like, I'm so embarrassed about this meth addict green Beatles apple on my arm. And he's like, come to my studio and I'll fix it for like nothing. Took 5.5 hours for him to fix it. But now it's like, it's presentable. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not horrible anymore. Yeah. It's just presentable. Yeah. All right. So what I love about this record is it really does bridge the gap between the Britpop shit that we got from the first 2 records, which I don't want to call shit. It's good music. Yes. But then we're getting where the Beatles become the Beatles. You're getting, I mean, what's the album after this, Adam?
Beatles for Sale.
Beatles for Sale. And then after that is what? Rubber Soul?
Help.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. And then Rubber Soul. So you're starting to get them to venture out. Did you ever see the movie?
No, I haven't seen it. And my friend was recommending it to me. The whole thing, I remember I did some calculus in my head because when it was available on video, it was hard to get. And I was like, if it was that good, it would be it would be on TV all the time. It would be like Jaws or something like that. And so I assumed it wasn't any good, but I think for a Beatles fan, it's probably better.
No, you're not wrong. I don't think you know what's funny? I don't think I've ever watched it. I always assumed it was just them being chased by women. Isn't that the whole premise of it?
That's what I had this idea that it was just because I wasn't a huge fan of Benny Hill or the Three Stooges. And I was like, oh, it's just these guys who I appreciate their music. I can't imagine I'd appreciate their comedic acting.
I mean, they're not. I mean, Ringo can kind of act. He was in that Caveman movie in like the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah, he's believable.
And George got into, do you remember the movie Time Bandits about like Can I still say midgets? Can I still say that, or am I getting canceled for saying? I can say midgets. Adam said it's okay. Yeah, it's with all those
little people.
Yeah, that might be the way to go.
Call Brad Williams real quick and ask him if I can call him a midget. Can we
but
do that?
Brad Williams is not the spokesman for little people.
Hey, man, he's all right. Who's the guy from Game of Thrones?
Call Roloff Farms.
Who's that?
Roloff Farms is the Little People Big World family, and they're like the nicest people I've ever seen on reality television.
Oh, God bless their souls. You know what I love about little people is they all have huge asses. You ever notice that? They all have cake. Can I say that? Am I going to get canceled? Please.
I don't think we're big enough to get canceled. So we're safe.
Okay, cool. This is why. just imagine it's just like on the Intero Bang or on Twitter. It's just like Gary Gulman, Josh Adam Myers think little people have cake.
I didn't agree on the the cake. I sat out the cake.
You're not. It's Gary's in the clear, everybody. Just so we know, come after me. So the movie, we got a little blurb on this. This was the title song of the first of 5 Beatles movies. It got 2 Oscar nominations, was a hit with critics and audiences. At the time, a lot of movies were made starring musicians, but most were showcases for singers and not very good, mostly like the Elvis movies. A Hard Day's Night was a surprise because it actually had cinematic value. It even sold well when it released on DVD many years later. When they made the deal, let me take that again. When the deal was made to make this movie, the Beatles had not yet caught on in America, and there were fairly low expectations for the film, as the Beatles were thought of as a fad that would soon pass. By the time filming began, the Beatles were huge, and it was clear that a lot of people would see it. The studio considered putting more money into the film, but they decided to stick with the original modest budget. In order to save money, it was shot in black and white. This is kind of the movie where the Beatles, 4 distinct personalities, and that also was planned to change the way they were marketed. Previously, they were always presented as a unified group, but it became clear that fans loved seeing their differences and began to associate with them individually. Now that brings up my next question. Out of that 7-year Beatle run, what is your favorite Beatles? Does that make sense? Like, what is when you look at the pictures, which are the ones that you dig the most?
I mean, I love it when they got long hair and beards. That really,
Let It Be, Be Beatles. Yeah, dude. Yeah,
but I mean, I love the music on the Abbey Road, but man, when they went full hippie, that's my Beatles. I don't know why at such a young age I would recognize the bubblegum aspect of the Beatles. It didn't turn me off. I just recognized work.
Yeah.
Probably because you have this innate understanding of originality and degree of difficulty. Like, it just seems like there was a Beatles that sounded like a lot of bands that I heard, and then there was a Beatles, Strawberry Fields Forever, for instance, or Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, where like they don't sound like anybody, but there's a lot of people who would sound like them at the time. Yeah. Like, because I had access to music that was building on the Beatles, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of the trippy kind of sound coming from 70s prog rock. And I mean, the thing is, I don't know, and you probably are a better source for this because I'm not that aware, but were Pink Floyd, I mean, do they influence each other? Is there a separate gene pool, or what do you think because it's not a coincidence that I love Pink Floyd and also the Beatles sound that sounds the most like Pink Floyd.
So that's funny that you mentioned that. So I've always been a Pink Floyd fan, but I was all the later records, like probably starting around Dark Side, right. Animals, Wish You Were Here. I like The Wall, but it's not my favorite record by them. And because I love the David Gilmour stuff. And then on this podcast, the first record that we did by Pink Floyd was, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, we did I think it was the last or the first one with Sid Barrett, which is very psychedelic, very out there. You know, when do I think the Beatles contributed to that? Adam, you're gonna have to check this math. Did Saucer, the album we did by Pink Floyd, what came out first? Was it Revolver, Tomorrow Never Knows, or is it that record by Pink Floyd?
So Revolver came out before Piper at the Gates of Dawn for Pink.
Okay, so we're doing Piper. Okay, so then I think there was that psychedelic sound that was already starting to develop in the world. The Beatles kind of, this is somebody's gonna get mad at me if I'm right or if I'm wrong, is that the Beatles did Revolver, and that is kind of as known as like one of the first like real psychedelic rock songs that actually was very popular. And I think from that, Pink Floyd then ventured out to get even more deeper into psychedelic, and I don't want to call it noise rock, but you know, like just weird sounds, playing around with the recording. But the Beatles are kind of the band that I think was at the forefront of making certain types of music popular. And so when you get to that, when Sid Barrett leaves Pink Floyd and you get to the David Gilmour, the Roger Waters incarnation of the band, I mean, how could you not think that Wish You Were Here, or even, you know, Dark Side or Animals? I mean, of course it had to be influenced by the Beatles. Everything, I think, was influenced by the Beatles. It has to be, because it was so big. It's just like saying, like, you're listening to Drake now. Michael Jackson, Billie Jean influenced all the music that we've heard because it was so different and so groundbreaking. I don't think that you could talk about X without talking about Y.
Right.
And of course, you know, it's the Beatles were just so big that when you talk about these people of being who was the first to do it, it's like you have to say, well, maybe they weren't the first, but they definitely were the ones that made it popular.
Yes.
And I think that's what's so impressive about the band is that, you know, first thing you said was they did everything in 7 years. It's like, dude, as a comic, it's like, if it's 7 years, you're still doing the same shit in a sense you started doing. It's like, you don't even have a breakthrough in our profession until you're 10, 12, 13, 14. Like I always say, I'm 14 years in and I just got funny.
Oh, I know.
You know?
I know. It's crazy. It's also the best thing about comedy is that you can improve into your 70s, I imagine.
Sure. But nobody wants to see a fucking 85-year-old guy up there, like just, you know, ranting. It's like we always talk about Carlin towards the end of his life, and he's just like, God, he just seems angry. He's just, when you get to a certain age and you're telling it like it is, and then they're just like, oh, you're just you're the angry old man, like yelling at the young kids.
Yeah, it's interesting, but those sort of prophet-like spoken word people and writers, they just get so overwhelmed by the world. Twain, it happened to Twain, it happened to Vonnegut, and I mean, it doesn't seem to have happened to Dylan, but it definitely happened to Carlin, where he just, you can, I mean, I watched that documentary, and the sentence that really hit me was that beneath I think it was Roseanne who said it, but she was quoting somebody else, that beneath the cynic is a broken-hearted idealist, a broken-hearted idealist, somebody who really wanted everything to be great, and then you get the crap beaten out of you by the world, and it can make you bitter, it can make you mean. Yeah.
Let me ask you this: when, because you've been doing stand-up how long?
It'll be 29 years on October 11th.
Fuck yeah, man. When do you feel like you had your, and I'm not talking about in fame, but your breakthrough as a comic where you really started to be the Gary Gulman we see now? Yeah,
I would say 2011. It was when 2011. It's so funny because I was 41 years old, but I had 3 roommates. I lived with 3 Mormon men, including Ryan Hamilton, a comedian on the Upper East Side.
And he could be Mormon. He could be Mormon. He looks like a Mormon for sure. If he showed up at my door with a pamphlet, I'd be like, yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. So it was interesting because I was probably never broker in that I owed so much money. I owed so much in taxes, and I had a house that I was underwater on, and it was the result of the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. I just couldn't get any work, but I was pretty prolific as far as writing every day and going out there. I wasn't making any money, but I really hit my stride getting on stage. I needed the money from the spots in the city, whether they be $20 or $75 was the top. I needed it. So I had to make my rent, which we shared 4 ways. It was probably only $1,100 or $1,200, but I had to work every night. And I mean, I'm only going to mention this because we're talking about the Beatles. It was my Hamburg. It was
except you weren't 18.
Yeah, I was 41. I just had so much stage time and so little money to do anything but write and read. So I was taking out library books all the time, and it was one of the most fertile periods of my career. And it wasn't desperation, because I don't think anybody does great work out of desperation. It was just kind of, well, this is what I always wanted to do. I wanted to get on stage 7 times, and now I have 7 times a night. So this is the excuse I have, which is I need to. And then there's the other thing where you're getting on stage so much, you can come up with new stuff so frequently. Because that I will say was the key, is being able to write on stage. There's a time in my career where I was getting so little stage time where I had to write, memorize, and say exactly what I came to say. And then there was the time where I just could get as much stage time as I wanted, and I had some freedom and some looseness. So that was the key.
And I think going off of what you're saying is so impressive then when we compare this to music, because the Beatles were a hit from Please Please Me. And they constantly never rested in their laurels, where they were like, okay, we'll make this album again, or we'll do this. They were constantly changing. And every time they changed, they made another $10 million each and kept becoming more successful. They're buying fucking cottages out in like Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And it's like, and yet they still pushed themselves, which, 12 albums in 7 years.
Yeah, that inspires me. And I have a question related to that, which is, I think that I had read a conversation or interviews, or maybe people were just talking about this, where the creative differences between Lennon and McCartney was that McCartney was, it seemed, and maybe I'm misremembering it, McCartney was more content being kind of a more poppy band, and Lennon wanted to be the Rolling Stones. Does that ring a bell?
I wouldn't say you're wrong about that, just from what I know about the band, because if you listen to the White Album, Paul is obla-dee, obla-da, and John Lennon is happiness is a warm gun. And I mean, those couldn't be 2 more different songs. I think that is why they were such a great duo together. Is Lennon was a cynic, and Paul was he's all bubbly, you know what I mean? Yeah. He's like, oh well, the fucking the Dana Carvey impersonation. Right. It's like, I don't really do a boobily do, he's great. I was like, yeah. I had a joke that I gave up on it, but I was like, when the Beatles had a cartoon at the height of their fame, they just released their image. They didn't do any voices on the show, but there was one episode, it's made in like 1967, where they go to like Africa and China, and it's made in 1967. So they, the animation and the acting that they chose for the African and the Chinese people is stereotypically racist. Yeah. And they started attacking Paul McCartney and Ringo, and they were like, you guys, you know, were racist. And Paul was like, no, 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 no. I had nothing to do with it. It wasn't my voicey voice. It was just my facey ways. I wasn't doing it. And then the whole joke, and I was like, what if like Paul McCartney was racist? He'd be like the most adorable racist in the world. And then it just gets stupid where it's like, all these Jamaicans are coming around. You can't understand them. The voice is all obla da. You know what I mean? And it would work and it wouldn't. And I don't think I had the confidence in it. But it's like Paul McCartney is this, you know, it's like he donates money. He works on this. And John, you know, did heroin and cheated on his wife, possibly beat his wife. Like he, you know, there was a son that, you know, I don't want to say he ignored, but, you know, Julian got the short end of the stick compared to Sean.
Right.
But also John had pain. You know, his mom died when he was young. He was raised by his aunt. You know, he got married and knocked somebody up. He knocked up whatever her name was. Who was his wife's name, Adam? Because I don't want to say it's not Linda, because that was Paul's. But yeah, it doesn't make a difference. He had a tougher life. And I'm not saying Paul didn't either, but I think you can hear it in the music for sure. And I think that's why it works.
Cynthia, by the way.
Cynthia, yes. Do you think that because their career was only 7 years, that's what has helped their legacy in the long run? Do you think it's a mystique? Is it like, does it kind of build to the legend of them?
I mean, that's interesting because we can compare it to the Rolling Stones or Springsteen, and it's hard for whatever reason to recapture. And the thing I always wonder when I ask musicians is, because we know as comedians that there are acts from probably 4 or 5 years in are going to do the best in front of basic mainstream comedy club audiences. They'll eat it up, and we'll listen to it and think, well, this stuff was so easy to write, and it's not that great, and yet it will murder in the clubs. And so does a band like the Rolling Stones or a musician writer like Dylan, do they get to a point where it is too easy for them to write hits, and they want to do things that are much like Rush did this? It seems like Rush kept getting more and more esoteric and different, but they also explored different styles and sounds. So I wonder, I mean, I just know that for a comedian, if you can avoid getting super famous so that people laugh at everything you say, you can keep getting better and adjust the level of difficulty. And another comedian will say, oh, this person is doing their best work. Like I always think of Maria Bamford, who just keeps getting better and better. And it's really impressive. And I wonder if what is keeping somebody like a Bruce Springsteen or Dylan from writing another big hit? It can't just be the music business. I imagine that part of it is their own personal taste.
Yeah. Yeah, I someone like Radiohead, who starts with, you know, Creep, which is, you know, one of the bigger pop songs to the 90s, and all they've ever done since that is just try to push like fans away. It's just like, no, we're gonna keep going. It's Miles Davis starting with like the regular hard, you know, bop, and then turning into hard bop, and then going electric and doing this weird, you know, acid jazz and like free jazz. It's what I think really, you know, makes an artist, you know, some people don't want the fame, and so they try to do it. So they try to make weirder shit. So it's like, no, this is what I want to make. But then like the Beatles, it's like, I don't think Paul McCartney can write anything but like a jolly hit song. John, we don't know, because John died in 80, and it's like, you know, but also keep in mind, right before he died, he made his best solo record, Double Jeopardy, which is, you know, which is a classic. And, you know, I think that when you talk about a career in 7 years and what they accomplished, it's just, I really, there's no argument that anybody could say no other artist has been able to do what they did, you know, and now it would be even easier because you have social media, you have so many avenues to get the music. It was like this was a totally different time. They had it must have been Beatles nonstop on the radio. You know what I mean? It must have just been it's like all Beatles all the time.
Yeah.
Good for them. Good for them. They deserve it. They fucking love it.
I mean, that's what's so extraordinary about that 7-year period of time, which is that just listening to Hard Day's Night a few times over the past couple of days, there's any one of those songs is a hit. There's not a single song where I wanted to fast forward to the next skip rather and listen to the next track. It just, every single one is good. And I mean, I'm sure there's been albums since then, but it's like Thriller did that.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen very frequently where an album there was, I mean, we understand the term filler because it was just it's cliche. Every single album was mostly filler. There were 2 or 3 tracks that were listenable.
Yeah. And I love that you said that too, because what I learned in like 1995, 96, when I became a Beatles fan, was that the hits are great. Not taking anything away from the hits. It's the other songs. It's the ones that aren't on the red or the blue, or they're not on Beatles #1. Those are the ones that I love. Like, I'm not going to say my favorite song yet, because we're going to ask you the same question at the end. I love A Hard Day's Night. I love Can't Buy Me Love. But dude, there's like 3 or 4 songs on this record that I would much rather listen to than A Hard Day's Night. And Hard Day's Night fucking slaps right from that fucking note. It's just like you're into it. And it's arguably one of their most popular songs. But it's like, what's so great about this band is it's like, dude, the deep cuts, they're not even so much they're deep. They could have been singles as well.
Yes.
How many singles were released from this, Adam? All right, so only Can't Buy Me Love and A Hard Day's Night, which I would arguably say aren't the 2 best songs on the record.
No,
they're fucking incredible. All right, let's get to some of these questions because we got a few more minutes left. All right, okay, this is what I want to know. All right, fuck, marry, kill, or become, Beatles edition. Who do you got? I didn't write this, but I like this question.
Wait a minute. And I choose a member of the
Beatles. Yeah. So you got to fuck one, you got to marry one, you got to kill one, and then you got to become one.
Oh, we'd all fuck John Lennon.
Okay.
you should marry McCartney. He seems to be good at being a husband, or the best at being a husband. Kill. Jeez Louise. I'm not going to fall into it because I was just saying how special Ringo was the other day. I mean, the whole thing is that you
got to kill one. There's 4 things. You got to kill Ringo if you're going to kill it.
And then I become Ringo Starr.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I am fucking John Lennon because it would be fun. He probably can fuck. How tall was John Lennon, Adam? Because I'm imagining he's got like a long dick. You know, he's
only 5'11", so I mean
he's 5'11", but he's a white guy, you know, over, dude, we're doing, if you're over like 5'10", you're white. Like they always talk, you know what's funny too? They always talk about how black dudes have big dicks. You know, who's always got the biggest dick in the world? Some like Ecuadorian farmer.
Really?
Dude, the guy with the biggest dick is this. It's like, I think he's from Central America, maybe like Nicaragua or something. And they're packing heat, dude. So black dudes I get, but dude, find me a fucking Costa Rican like bean farmer. I bet you they've got bigger dicks. Yeah, what do you say? Makes it tough to plow the field. Yeah, for sure, dude. All right, you're fucking John Lennon. All right, I'm gonna marry Paul. I'm gonna kill Ringo, and I become George Harrison because George became my favorite Beatle over time. Because I think out of all of them, he was the most spiritually sound, and I think that, you know, he really did, he didn't try to like disown his fame, but I think he figured out a way to accept it and to not hate himself for it. Whereas I think John did. I think John had, like we said, he had a lot of issues. Ringo is extremely talented. Not taking anything away from him. You marry Paul because he's got all the money and he's the one that you're going to have the longest. All right, where we at? 49. Let me see if I got any other questions. All right, this is so dumb. If each member of the Beatles were soups, what would they be?
Okay. I guess I feel like Paul would be a lentil because he's a vegan, and yeah. Okay. So I think I'm not sure that this is a soup, but I feel like George Harrison would be a chana masala.
Yes, yeah, there it is. Okay.
In India, I feel that John would be this soup that was made from a number of I just, for whatever reason, and he's no more working class than any other zillionaire. I think of him as a working class guy who would have a soup that was made up of a lot of things that were left over in the kitchen, including some hamburger patties ground down. So I think that would be his soup. And then Ringo Starr, for whatever reason, and I don't know if this is true, and maybe Adam can look this up. For some reason, I thought growing up that Ringo Starr was a Jewish man, and so I think that matzo ball soup would be Ringo Starr.
I can see that.
I don't know that he's a Jewish man.
I don't think he is. I don't think any of the Beatles were Jewish. I would say I think Paul's more of like a chicken soup. I think even though he's vegetarian, I get it, but I think it's like, what's the most popular soup?
Okay.
Chicken soup. What's more popular than chicken soup? Like, what's a bigger soup than chicken? Lentil? You think lentil?
No.
I get the vegan thing. Lentil's like, I like a lentil. I like a nice lentil soup.
Yeah.
But I think chicken. I think John is because he's a working class hero. I think he is, like Adam said it, but it's true. He's a porridge, like a strong porridge.
Yes. And
like you said, George is a curry of some sort.
Yeah.
And Ringo is like a can of SpaghettiOs.
I like what I mean?
That. Which is, but you don't strain it. Tomato. Yeah. No, not even tomato soup, Adam. He's fucking SpaghettiOs. He's good, but
but now you're not obeying the thing because you're just saying things that would come in a can.
Yeah,
and SpaghettiOs is not a soup. The funny thing is, Josh, that in preparation for this, I consulted my only friend who graduated from Berklee School of Music to discuss this, and believe it or not, what soup each Beatle was did not come up in our preparation. So I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, there's nothing about the soup.
Here's the thing is that it's like, I feel like it's like when you're talking about the Beatles, and this is our third time doing it. It's like, there's so many questions that we've asked, and like, I could sit here and you already mentioned it. We could talk about the songs and what sounds good about them, but they're all good. It's A Hard Day's Night is fucking classic. I Should Have Known Better is this a Patty Harrison song? Patty Boyd. Is this Adam? Dude, Jim Jeffries said it, because I don't think more songs have been written about Patty Boyd. Eric Clapton, stole her from George.
Yeah.
George written 10 songs. You've got Something, you've got Layla. As Jim Jeffries said, and I want everybody that's listening to hashtag it again. What was it? What was the hashtag, Adam? Was it Patty Boyd has a golden pussy?
That was it. Something along those lines. Yeah.
There it is. There it is, guys. Just so we know, if you've listened to it all the way through, hashtag Patty Gold has a golden pussy. She does. No, I'm telling you, she's incredible. She's a good-looking girl. If I Fell is incredible. I'm Happy to Dance with You, and I Love Her is a perfect love song. Tell Me Why, Can't Buy Me. I mean, this is like, we could sit here and talk about the chart positions, but who gives a shit? This is knowing what soups is way better. All right, we got Patreon questions, and then we'll do the final four and get you out of here. Dude, this rules, man. I'm glad you were able to do this, man.
I really appreciate your patience because we've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, but
I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
I wanted to interject one notion about the because like I told you, I did some research, but my friend Alex was saying that note that we love at the very beginning of the album, at the beginning of Hard Day's Night, he said it's called a sus note. And so it has this kind of, it keeps you in suspense. It like really, it's just this chord. And he said that what's really special about the Beatles as a whole and this album was that they really did a lot of innovation with chords and things like that. But that note is so there are so few little things in life. The sense of smell is really good at this, but that quick note, man, you immediately know what you're about to get into, and it's just I always fantasize about hearing something this, being aware of how having great taste, right? Okay. Having great taste, knowing how difficult this is, and hearing that album, the opening for the first time, just your mind is just I mean, it's so easy to say mind blowing now. It's become cliche, but just be so, I guess, in awe of and you've never heard it before. It's just, you can't, it's hard for me to think of a time when I hadn't heard it before, but I remember the time of day I first heard, and I loved her, and I love her. I remember the time of year. It was the summertime. It was in my brother's room, and it was a cool night that we didn't have air conditioning in the house, so you could only get cool from opening the windows really wide. And so I mean, and I'm back there in a second, just from the opening to, and I love her. It's just, to me, that is you are given a template for how you should feel when you're in love at a certain age, from the first love song you hear, and when your wife eventually comes around and you're like, oh shit, this is what I had held out for.
Yeah, it really is beautiful. There's so much on this record that it's like, I mean, where do you put this in the Beatles? Like, out of the 12 records that you know, do you put this in like their top 3, or do you put this in the middle, or you put this in? We don't have to rank them because there's so many, and that'll take too long. But do you think this is one of their more important ones? Do you think this is just because we can't call the album filler? There's no filler tracks, but no. Would you call this an important Beatles record or like a filler Beatles record? Where do you stack it in their repertoire?
Can I call it, along with the Beatles, a bridge?
Okay.
Sort of a bridge from the bubble gum, and their bubble gum is the best bubble gum of all time. Sure. But it's poppy, and then this is sort of the bridge, and you see what they're doing with the Beatles, and then later Rubber Soul and Revolver. So I really think it's an important album, but it just tells you how, and we can go on and on. It reminds me of the Saturday Night Live skit about the Sopranos, that the Sopranos has replaced oxygen as what we breathe in the country. And Phil, that's what the Beatles are. That Hard Day's Night is not, to me, in their top 3 best albums. Yeah. And it's a masterpiece. It
really is. Now you're right. I'm telling you, the albums that they have released, each one of them is just as important as the one before it and the one after. It's like, you're right. They're all bridges to get us to the long and winding road, which is so fucking different than everything that started it. And I think that's why when we talk about their careers as a whole, you can't be an individual album like lover of the Beatles. You have to be like, oh man, it's just like, you look at their career and you're just like, that's it's all just one long album. It's all just one greatest hits because it's all hits.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. All right. We got 2 Patreon questions. This is from Paggy. Is it Paggy, Adam, or is it okay? Paggy. And see, but I don't know if we've seen all of these. So, which is your favorite Beatles movie? So we've got A Hard Day's Night, Help, Yellow Submarine, Magical Mystery Tour, Let It Be, Across the Universe. That was a okay. Well, I'll put that in there. Yesterday or Get Back. Out of all of those, have you seen most of them? Because I think Across the Universe was like a musical that came out where they used their music. Yesterday was the one about the British guy who gets hit on the head, and next thing you know, everybody doesn't know who the Beatles are. Get Back was the one that just came out, which I think I've said it on here before. I actually was hooking up with the girl while we watched it. And because it was like we'd be watching Get Back, and then like George would start playing something, in the studio, and it's so it's romantic, and so I like lean over, I start making out with the girl, maybe getting to second base, and then right when we started having sex, it's like it cuts, the song ends, and it goes to like an argument of the Beatles where they're like, "Oh no, I'll play whatever you want me to play, I'll play," and you're trying to fuck, and you're just like, okay, like maybe we should just put on. What's your favorite?
You do great impressions.
Thank you very much. I only got a couple. I've got a couple of the Beatles, and then I can do the pitching coach from the movie Major League. Do you remember that guy? Like Dorn, give him the heater. I can do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love that guy.
Thank you very much. All right. So out of those movies that we mentioned, which ones would you say is your favorite?
I mean, I would say Yellow Submarine, but I always consider the movie Can't Buy Me Love and the That Thing You Do sort of Beatles movies too.
Yeah, and, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah.
So I would have to say That Thing You Do. I haven't seen Yesterday yet.
Okay, it's good. It's like it's not like it's it's what it is. It's a good airplane movie.
Yeah, and also one of the greatest premises I've ever heard of.
Oh, they did it right. It was fun. It was, somebody told me if you're a Beatles fan, you're gonna love it. And I put it on my flight from New York to LA, and I was like, oh, it's cute. But out of everything, and I'm including the 2 ones that you mentioned, I'm gonna say Can't Buy Me Love, because I remember when I was a little kid and I watched that, and when he does the big speech at the end, he was like, when you broke your arm, I fucking carried you all the way to the hospital and blah blah blah. I started crying because I thought it was so powerful.
It is powerful. Now it's a universal phenomenon. He captured the irony, the hypocrisy, and the rage of the high school social system.
Yeah, he really did. And they threw shit on somebody's house, which, God bless their soul, man. Which led to so many people probably being like, oh, we can do that? I didn't realize you could shit on somebody's house. Thank you, Patrick Dempsey. All right, so yeah, we're both saying, he's saying That Thing You Do, which, by the way, we've had I was the guy, I don't know if you remember this, a few years ago at the music comedy show that I do, the Goddamn Comedy Jam. I reunited the Wonders. So Tom Everett Scott, Jonathan Sach, Ethan Embry. The only person that wasn't there was the other dude. I can't think of his name. Yeah, him. Wait, Adam, what's his name? The other guy, last guy, Steve Zahn. Steve Zahn was the only guy that couldn't make it, but I did the opening of the show, and because I'm friends with Tom, and he hit up John, and he hit up Ethan, and then we played That Thing You Do. I sang it. I'll send you the video of it. It got picked up on like Entertainment Tonight, and they're just such good guys. The only people that could play actual music was Ethan, the bassist, just to give you the heads up. Jonathan Sach just picked up a guitar and started strumming it. It wasn't even plugged in, and he was the singer. So I sang it, and I sounded terrible. All right, this one's from Justin Nemec. A Hard Day's Night is the first Beatles album made up of all original Lennon-McCartney compositions. What is your favorite of their cover songs from their earlier records? See, for that, I'd have to look up let's go to, so With the Beatles, some of the covers, because it's got to be something off of With the Beatles. Here we
Roll
go.
Over Beethoven.
Roll Over Beethoven's Chuck Berry. You Really Got a Hold on Me is a good one. You know what? Twist and Shout. Are you going with Twist and Shout? I actually think You Really Got a Hold on Me is one of my favorite ones of their covers. I love that song so much, man. It's like, it's especially because on With the Beatles, It Won't Be Long, All I've Got to Do, All My Loving, they're all great songs, but I love slow blues. And I think You Really Got a Hold of Me. I think they did it justice. It's a really great song.
Yeah, it really is.
All right. Let's get you out of here. We got 3 questions we ask every guest. I'm not changing them now. Favorite song on this record, Gary?
And I Love Her.
And I Love Her.
Yeah.
All right. This is so everybody knows, I'm not, one of my favorite Beatles songs of all time. This is in my top 3 is Things We Said Today.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, one day when you're dreaming, in love, not a lot to say. And then it like changes like real 60s, like, what is something loves I do? What to hear you say that love is good. I fucking love it.
It's a shame the compilations are a great intro, but you miss out so much if you can't afford the album. So it's so great that we have access to them now. But growing up, I didn't have the deep cuts. I just had those compilations.
I spent most of my money on albums when I was growing up. We didn't have a lot of money when I was younger. So my parents for birthdays would be like, all right, you got $20 birthday gift, or, for Christmas, it was like maybe one big thing, like a boombox. And most of the time, everything I got or I spent my money on was either movies or music. And so when I saw Anthology over the next, 3 months, I spent all the money that I made on buying all the Beatles records, because it wasn't the hit. You could buy a greatest hits for the Beatles and it's not enough. It's like I said, those other tracks, like Things We Said Today, are the ones that stick with me way more than A Hard Day's Night.
Yes, totally.
Okay. Now we ask everybody this, and I know we said this is a perfect record. What song on this record do you skip over? Like, what's your least favorite song on this album?
Just To Dance With You, probably.
Let me look. What do you just? It's just the. I can't. I'm gonna ask. Should I ask why? Cut that out too, Peter, because I don't know. I never ask why. Do I ask why? Why don't you? Do you have an answer, or just you're just like meh?
I think it feels phony to me for some reason. Because I was thinking about this with regards to comedy, how you couldn't really say anything really sexual in the 60s in comedy. You would be like one of those comedians who you could only get listened to on an album. They obviously there was no cable, right?
Yeah.
But musicians thought they had a way around it. They would just say dance or love, and it just like it feels phony because they were trying to say something in it.
Trying to say fuck, yeah. They can't say fuck, yeah. I'm just happy just to fuck you.
Yeah, it's the. I mean, you can say anything you want, and the choices that we make now are interesting with regard to Wet Ass Pussy versus. It almost like I remember somebody saying about Howard Stern that the limits. Not that he's not as great as ever, but the limits sort of make you more creative. I mean, you find that in comedy and music too, is that certain limitations you have to do some more thinking, some more digging, you need some more inspiration.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. I would have to say, Tell Me Why. I don't, it's fine. I just think that I was like, because I would also say, like, when I listen to this, recently, because I've heard A Hard Day's Night and Can't Buy Me Love so much, I probably was just like, I don't need to listen to this one right now. I don't expect Hard Day's Night. I always listen to, but I think Can't Buy Me Love. It's not my least favorite at all, but I think if I'm going to skip over anything, I'm going to skip over one I've heard thousands of times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel like Can't Buy Me Love is a cup of coffee though, man. I hear that song and I'm like, oh yeah, it's to me, it's as influential philosophically as the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right. Now this is a 2-part question. One, can you fuck to this album? Is it a fuckable album? And then if you have a sex playlist already where you're taking a collection of songs, what song are you pulling out of here to add to that sex playlist?
Yeah, I mean, the playlist is called Skins.
Nice.
And from Boys in the Hood was the first time I heard "Give Me the Skins." So yeah. I would put "And I Love Her" on that. You cannot fuck to this album. It's no. It's no.
I agree. It's not a fuckable record. Here's the
thing that happens to middle-aged white men, and I don't know if I guess 42 is considered middle-aged white men.
Sure.
We cannot hear a lot of these songs without telling the woman we're with insightful trivia about the lyrics and the origins of the songs. I mean, it's got to be so irritating to be my wife and listen to music because I can't help myself.
Yeah.
And she's so patient with me, but it's like, yeah, I don't need to hear trivia about the band America. I just like this song.
Yeah. It's not a fuckable record. I really think the only song you can fuck to, If I Fell and I Love Her, I would say I'm pulling If I Fell. Yeah. If I Fell for sure. All right, final question. It was not even a question. What's your elevator pitch to get somebody to listen to this album?
It has the most iconic opening to any album.
It's got a name. Wait, what is that? What is that thing called again?
Oh, the Sus Note.
Sus Note. Yeah, dude. Yeah. Hashtag Sus Note. Everybody else. So hashtag Patty Boyd has golden pussy. Hashtag Sus Note.
I'm not sure how to spell it. Adam, how do you spell Sus Note?
Yeah, figure it out, Adam.
It's something to do with combining a minor and major chords or whatever. It leaves the brain in suspense. I mean, it's a miraculous note. So I would say it's got the greatest opening and also 3 of the finest combinations of notes, instruments, and lyrics in the history of recorded sound.
There it is, everybody. If you haven't listened to this record already, you nuts, listen to it, and then come back and re-listen to this podcast. Gary, promote away anything you want to promote, bud.
Oh, I mean, I'll be back on tour in the fall, and they can, if they're interested in watching The Great Depression, it streams on HBO and HBO Max. So that's the last special I put out, and I'm touring with a new hour and a half again in the fall. So that's it.
Go see Gary, watch The Great Depression. It really was brilliant, man. And Thanks, I mean that. I'm not just saying that because you're on the podcast. I'm a fan, dude.
I really appreciate that. And I hope that we can hang out. It's interesting how close you can get just discussing music. I feel like we would really have a lot to talk about.
Oh, bro. Here's the deal. You're coming back on. Don't worry.
Okay.
We're homies, but you're coming back on. We'll send you the list and you just tell us what else you want to do and we'll get you back. Okay.
I'd love it. Thanks, guys.
You got it, brother.
Pleasure. All right. Have a great night.
You too, buddy.
Okay. Bye.